Hi, everybody. Welcome to week 3. Today, we're going to talk about one of the most important parts of the writing process, and that is rewriting. A lot of students think good writing happens in one draft, but really, good writing happens in revision. Writing is not just about getting words on the page, it's about refining them. What is revision? I'm going to pause and give you a chance to read the slides, okay? And then I'll elaborate, and I'll do this for each slide moving forward. So, when you finish a draft, you're not done. Think of your first draft as building the frame of a house. It gives you structure, but it needs work before it's livable. Reviewing your paper several times helps you strengthen your ideas, fix organization, and polish your language. When you are in the revision process, make sure that you consider the whole work. Okay? Ask yourself these questions. Once you have taken a moment to think about, okay, where you are in the revision process or where you need to start, now it's time to edit and start proofreading. And this is the step where you really slow down. Don't just skim. Read each line carefully, checking for grammar, punctuation, and spelling. Sometimes it helps to read out loud. That way you can catch awkward phrasing or missing words. Some strategies um, include the following. And yes, reading the paper backward may sound weird, but it actually helps you to stop and really catch what it is that you've written. Sometimes when we read it from top to bottom, we automatically kind of fill in the blanks because we know what it is that we were trying to say. But reading it backwards forces you to really stop and look. All of these strategies here are just different ways to help you to slow down and take your time, okay, when it comes to proofreading your own work. Also, please remember that tools like Grammarly or spell check are helpful, but they aren't perfect. For example, they might not catch if you use the wrong word, like writing there instead of there. So think of these tools as assistants, not editors. You're still the one responsible for making sure that your paper makes sense. Here are some more strategies. You know, we English teachers love our acronyms. So this one is ARMS. So the idea is you take your paper at arm's length, right? Step back from it so you can get a good look. Okay, see what you need to add, what you need to remove, what you need to move around, and what you need to substitute. I really like this saying, edit ruthlessly. Okay, I know that it can be hurtful when you get an essay back and your teacher or your professor or editor has redlined it all over the place, right? And they hand it back to you and it looks bloody, right? Because it's covered in red ink. Um, Personally, I don't use red ink for that reason. However, one way to avoid that is to not be afraid. Don't be so attached to your writing that you are afraid to get in there and, and tear it up yourself, okay? Don't get too attached, all right? Sometimes being concise and straight to the point is necessary. So there might be times when you need to cut out some of the wordiness for the sake of flow, right? Then there's times when you need to add more imagery, more on that later, okay? But don't be afraid, okay, during the writing process to edit ruthlessly. I'll give you a chance to read that again. Pointing the wrong direction there. To read that again, all right? So you can really catch it. All right, let's move on. All right, don't forget the basics. Your paper needs a proper title and MLA formatting. A title gives your essay focus and makes it feel complete. And in an essay like this one, a narrative where you're telling your own story, you want to make sure that your title is creative, okay? Not so and so's literary essay, you know? Um, make the title personal, make it sing a little bit. More on MLA format. This is just a visual of what MLA format should look like. Most word processors, including Google Docs and Microsoft Word, already come with the margins defined for MLA. So you should not have to touch the margins, okay? Um, if you need help with, for example, creating um, a header and the heading, which is all the way to your, it's backwards on my camera, you guys. So on my left, so your right, okay? Or double spacing or any of those things. If you check out Ms. Kofer's helpful writing resources, I actually have tutorials on all of those things. And you can always go to the Writing Center or you can always come and see me and I will help you out. All right, let's talk about this one. This is a fun one. Everybody loves peer review, right? Woohoo! This week, in lieu of a normal discussion board, you're going to peer review one another's narratives. Your initial post, which is due Friday, 11:30, will include an attachment of your first draft. Your response, which is due Sunday night at 11:30, will be to peer review another student's draft, and you're going to be using the template that I've provided. The instructions will be very detailed, so please read the instructions for this week's discussion board closely. And these are just the whys of why we do peer editing and why it's helpful. It really does work when you do it right. All right, and so now we're going to get into the how. All right, so we know why we peer edit, but how does it work? Okay, I'll give you a second to read and then I'll elaborate. All right, so a key point is that when you are reviewing someone else's writing, your job isn't to rewrite their essay for them. Instead, ask guiding questions. For example, what are you trying to say here? Or can you explain this point further? These kind of questions help the writer clarify their own thinking. And you want to encourage writers to explain their evidence more fully. You might ask, how does this quote support your main point? Or could you add more analysis here? This helps the writer build stronger connections between their ideas and their support. I am guilty of taking over and just wanting to jump in there and fix it. But as peer editors, peer reviewers, we have to be careful not to take over another's essay or another's writing to make it sound like what we think it should sound like. Okay, we have to put the onus on them. Okay, um, to make any edits and corrections. We are there to act as a guide to offer suggestions. So when you're peer reviewing, it's tempting to fix everything, but don't rewrite their thesis, don't change their sentences, and don't tell them exactly where to move a paragraph because that takes the ownership away from them. Instead, focus on suggestions and questions that empower them to revise their own. Okay? Take a moment and review these bullet points, and then we'll move on. Moving on to this week's reading. This week's reading was chosen because it's going to help you guys really flesh out your literacy narratives. When you're writing a narrative, okay, it's still, even though it's an essay, you're still telling a story. And so there's places within a narrative where you want to show and not tell. And that's what this article is all about. Okay? Specificity, imagery in writing, testing the effects of show, don't tell. So these writers here have actually put a scientific approach on the difference it makes when writers show their readers rather than just telling them. I'll elaborate. So, show, don't tell. Good storytelling happens when you don't just tell what happened, but you help your reader to experience it. So, as you write, pick one memory from your story and flesh it out with sensory detail. Explain. The writers use the five senses: sight, smell, touch, taste, sound, right? And figurative language, such as metaphors, similes, and personification, to show rather than tell. Okay? Take a moment to read. These are just some examples of ways that you can help your readers to experience, okay, the story that you're telling them. We also call this imagery because it appeals to your readers' five senses and helps them to experience the text. It is like painting a picture for your reader. This week's written assignment includes a summary of specificity, imagery, and writing. I want to clarify some things about writing a summary. If you're caught using AI on this assignment, you will receive an automatic 0. Let's pause here for a second so that we can read through the do's and don'ts of writing a summary. My goal is to show you that you don't need AI to write a decent summary. What a summary does is it takes a large work and condenses it down to its main idea and supporting arguments. It helps if you annotate the work paragraph by paragraph. Ask yourself, what is the main idea of this paragraph and how does it connect to the paper's thesis? If you can answer those questions, then you can write a summary. So your assignment, okay, is to write a 1 to 2 page summary of the article. Make sure it's in MLA format and has a works cited page. You're going to identify the main idea, explain the supporting points and evidence, capture the article's overall purpose and significance, and make sure you are writing it entirely in your own words. So we're not looking up what somebody else has to say about the article and putting in someone else's analysis. It all has to come from you, all right? In closing, remember writing is a process that includes revision and peer editing. Show, don't tell when writing narratives, and learning how to summarize succinctly can help you become a better writer. Okay? The key takeaway is this: good writing doesn't just happen in one try. It's about drafting, revising, proofreading, and sometimes rewriting entire sections. When you're working on your own essay or giving feedback to a classmate, remember that rewriting is what transforms a good idea into a strong final paper. Okay, and that is the end of this lecture. I hope that you found it helpful. Feel free to ask questions and watch and rewatch if you need to. And most importantly, have fun with this assignment, with these assignments, right? I will see you soon. Bye bye.